Welcome in to the debut of the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. No, we're bringing all the magic here on this podcast. We're going to come once a week to start here with the Sick Media Network. I am your host, Jake Brown. Weekly Mets guest, weekly segments, weekly mailbags. We want to hear from you, the Mets fans, the listeners, the viewers, the watchers, the tweeters, and get all your input. Plenty of fun coming up every week with me, Jake Brown, on Mets Magic. And coming up on the first episode of the program, it's a family reunion. I bring on my old co-host. He's on my shirt if you're watching on YouTube. Former Mets pitcher, former co-host with me on the Amazing But True podcast, Nelson Figueroa. It's Figgy and Jake on the debut of the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. Let's rock.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Mets Magic with Jake Brown.
And it's in there, strike three called. The Mets win the pennant. The New York Mets have won the National League pennant. Put it in the books. The New York Mets, for the first time in 15 years, are champions of the National League.
The sickest New York Mets podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Ooh, welcome to the debut of the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. I'm your host, Jake Brown. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Brown Radio. You know where to find me. If you don't know who I am one of the biggest Mets fans in the world, a diehard. I'm at the stadium all the time. I've talked to every player from Mike Piazza to David Wright to Pete Alonso. I hosted the Amazing But True podcast with my guest today for 4 seasons. Boy, do we have so much fun doing it. So many live shows, so many new fans. It was a blast, but as they say, all good things come to an end. And as that show ended a few weeks ago, I was missing Mets talk, so I went to the Sick Media Network. That is the Sick Podcast Network, and this is the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. You can follow us on Twitter or X, whatever the hell you want to call it, at Sick Pod Mets. You can also get us wherever you get podcasts. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast, and watch us. Please subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube, Jake Brown Radio. But subscribe to our show YouTube at the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. Subscribe, give us a thumbs up below. Let us know how you're liking it. In the comments, talk Mets. Let us know what guests you want, what segments you want, and all of that jazz. So, as I said, I'm Jake Brown. The Mets are coming off a West Coast trip where they went 3-3, and we have so much to get into. And to do all of that, why don't we bring in my special guest? You know, for the first show, I was debating, do I bring him on now? Do I bring him on later? Well, I'll probably bring him on later. But I feel like for the last few weeks, they've been missing him. Some people might have listened to the show for him, and they muted my parts, or they lowered the volume, which you usually have to do when I speak. You were the monotone one. I was the lunatic. There were times you were a lunatic. I do think you are a deranged man, but we've had a good run. I've known you for about a decade now. I've known you in your Mets days, but not personally. Since the day my mom said I went to the same high school as you in the Atlanta Team Hotel back in 2008 when we went to the Mets Braves game and Daniel Murphy's dad brought a signed ball up to our hotel room. My mom was in a robe at midnight, and
whoa. Hell of an intro, Jake. Hell of an intro.
Well, I'll give you a nice intro here because usually it's just what's up. He is the co-host of Pix 11 TV's New York Sports Nation Nightly from 7 to 7:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. He has won an Emmy Award back in the days of SNY when he was the pre- and post-game analyst. He, of course, is the critically acclaimed backup host, the second best host of the Amazing But True podcast, I'd say. You see it on the shirt here. And he pitched for 9 seasons in the big leagues. There was a break in between, but it was a 2000 to 2011 range for multiple different teams. But we remember him most with the New York Mets in 2008 and 2009. He pitched in Taiwan, Japan, Mexico, maybe not Japan. I might have made that up. But every country, Mexico, was it Japan?
I pitched in Japan. We had the Konami Cup, so the winner of every Asian championship got to play to try and beat Japan on their home turf, which wasn't easy.
I had a Honami Cup for dinner last night, actually, or Konami. He is the pride of Brooklyn, but now he resides in New Jersey. I won't say where. I don't want the people to look you up, but you're in the state of New Jersey. Number 27 in your Mets scorecards. Number 1 in our hearts, Nelson Figueroa. How do you like that intro? You're never going to get that good of an intro, right?
That's a mouthful right there. Listen, nobody knows me as well as you do, Jake. We've been doing these things for quite some time. And as you said, all good things come to an end. I'm very excited for you and the Mets Magic podcast. I will definitely be subscribing and listening. This is in the year that they thought they were going to punt. We're starting to learn a lot of things early on about this team, a lot of things that fans like, and especially someone like ourselves would definitely take a liking to the way that this team is shaping up.
Yeah, 0-5 feels like a lifetime ago. The sky was falling, the season was over, when people forgot to realize there were 157 more games and a Rally Pimp to boot. I mean, no one saw it coming. There won't be any pimp imagery on Mets Magic. They'll just be pimp loving from a guy with a coat like that. People know my fashion is wild. I wanted to get the coat, but he's basically trademarked it where I can't become Rally Pimp Jr. I can't become his son. I can't become one of his people.
Look, you tried. You had the shoes, you had the chains, you had everything. And
I think I'm the original Rally. I think I'm the OG Rally Pimp.
The coat, bro.
Well, it's hot out there. I sweat. So me in that fur coat, I'll have sweat towels. I'll be like this in the state, just wiping myself down like it's a hot summer day. So I don't think that coat would work for me, bro. That would be a tough one. So we'll talk about the Rally Pimp. We'll talk about the Mets, but I think I got to start it with the biggest story of the week. You talked about a mouthful. There'll be a mouthful of dollar dogs next week at Citi Field. Before we get anything Mets, this was like the most trending story on X, on Twitter. You see the Mets tweet, and the Mets set themselves up with this one, Nelson. Nelson, what? That's not your name. I've never called you by your name.
That's my government name.
Yeah, I don't.
About my government name. I think it's the Canada thing.
I hope they gave Seymour Wiener a check for this. I don't know if they gave him bingo cards, if they gave him a discount, a gift card to Stop and Shop, if that's still a grocery store. This veteran, who is the opening day veteran of the game, it's like the Mets were like, write the punchline, Seymour Wiener. You don't need to say it 10 times fast to chuckle a little bit like our immature selves. Seymour Wiener wants you to see more wieners in your mouth for $1 next Tuesday when the Mets play the Cubs. I think the Mets have been long overdue for this, Figgy. They've never done a $1 hot dog night, and they see there's like 12 people showing up on weeknight games. They got to get people out there. This is laughable. That's so Mets, LOL Mets, but it's absolutely genius.
Sometimes you have to go back to the drawing board, right? Talk about minor league type functions like this. So Dollar Dog Night, Thirsty Thursdays, things like that bring fans to the crowd, especially when you're trying to attract a younger audience. So I think it will be a hit. I think they're having fun with the Garbage Pail Kid. I don't know if you're too young to know what Garbage Pail Kids are.
Yeah, what's that?
So Garbage Pail Kids, you know what Cabbage Patch Kids are?
That I know, yeah.
Cabbage Patch Kids were all the rage, the biggest selling doll. It was a Christmas nightmare for everyone trying to get one for their kids. Well, they made these things called Garbage Pail Kids, and they made play on words. And Seymour Wiener was where that started. That it was a Garbage Pail Kid, but it's been this veteran's name for 100 years.
Was it spelled that way too? Was it spelled?
Yes,
it was. Okay.
Yes. So for 100 years, this man has had this name. This is the most flattering of times that he would be his name will be referenced, because he is now basically trademarked with the Mets and Dollar Dog Night. So listen, they had some fun with it, which we wouldn't have seen with the former ownership group. It's something that I said way back when I was first coming up in the major leagues. What are some of the things that I think you should do. And I always said that it had to be a way that you wouldn't lose money on a deal like this because people would just eat more hot dogs, right? They would eat more of them. So instead of paying $18 for one, they would probably eat 18 of them with their friends and family, and everybody would enjoy a hot dog and want to come back and have another one when the time presented itself.
And paying $8 for a hot dog is ludicrous. So $1 is affordable to the point where I may get them. And we know I'm Captain Bougie at Citi Field. I'll be doing food reviews. I'll do some on here. I'll air a few of them on here. My Mel's Butcher Box award-winning burger. Shout out to Mel. I've said it a few times. If you watch my YouTube or on Twitter or whatever, arguably the best burger I've ever had. We'll go, the lobster baked potato is good. The garlic bread chicken parm hero. But now we're going
chicken parm.
Put the $1 in the jar. I had to raise it since it's a once a month appearance. I might have $10 in the jar per chicken parm reference to donate to the Garbage Pail Kids Association. Now, by the way, the movie I'm looking at right now from 1987. I mean, you either got to be tripping on acid or stoned to watch that movie.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at the photos of it and I'm about to have a nightmare from some of these characters. The guy with zits all over his face, the cartoon.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember his name? I mean, you're showing your age now. You'll be 50 in a few weeks, right?
May something. In a few weeks. Yeah, May 18th.
Well, you're aging gracefully, but damn, you are getting old. It's like it's 3/4 of the way to your AARP birthday, which my dad just turned 65. But yeah, this is genius. Seymour Wiener, and then the other part of this, which will transition to our next topic, is Max Wiener's got to be involved. The Rally Pimp is the man that started this all. The Mets are 5-1 since they 6-1, at home since the Rally Pimp came out. It was the first win of the year. Detroit Tigers. I believe it was April Fool's Day as well, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, the jokes all right themselves, but the coat was out. They showed him. There were, again, 12 people there. There was no one there. They showed him. Apparently, the Tigers broadcast had interviewed him early in the week, so they had him first. But on SNY, he appeared in the, as I like to say, the tea time. Tyrone Taylor, what a steal he's been so far. We'll talk about him a little bit. But the Rally Pimp appeared on April Fool's Day, and it was no joke that the Mets are hot since he came out. Let's show Max Wiener, because I think the world has to remember, look at this guy. Just that pink coat I need. And, someone that you used to work with and, a guy in the business called it pimp imagery being problematic. Let's think about it for 2 seconds. Can we please not make a big part of the 2024 Mets pimp image? I mean, Fig, what are we doing here? I mean, this is just a fun. Can we ever have fun anymore?
Have fun.
You can't have fun. Cue the replies about woke culture, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I'm right about this. I don't think he's right about this.
No, listen, and you may think he shall remain nameless, but Andy Martino likes to do things for clicks. So whether he truly believes this or not, it worked. It was the biggest tweet he's ever had reposted and viewed. But I don't even know what the latest tally was, but it was well over 2 million last time I checked.
2 million views, I think you mean.
2 million views.
Yeah, 1.5 million views. It got 1,500 replies, 604 likes. So yeah, it's 1.5 million views is a good amount. So.
Yeah, you would take that any day of the week. So now Andy Martino has made a career out of doing things like this, and whether he believes it wholeheartedly or not, you got to know that this kid, of course, his name's Max Wiener.
Incredible. And a comedian. Well, he's trying to be a comedian. He's done some comedy in his life.
Listen, it's comedic at the fact that he said, I was just going to the game and vibing. He's a fan. He wanted the team to win. And you know how it is when you're a fan. You try to get the crowd going. You try to get everybody around you to do the Let's Go Mets chant at the right times because you're tapped into the team. Well, he has taken it to another level, of course. And, he's drawn a lot of attention, especially when the team was bad, on himself. As soon as the team wins, well, we need something to rally around. And listen, nobody is saying that he's the reason. He doesn't even feel he's the reason. He just loves the fact that the Mets were playing winning baseball, and he happens to be involved. Athletes logo, we know they make fantastic T-shirts and designs. They already have the Rally Pimp T-shirt, which has already been circulated.
And they got multiple versions. I mean, both of them are cashing out because they have two versions. I think they're like 30 each. I'm gonna have to hit up Athlete Logos because 30's not bad. I want both, but preferably free if I can. But
listen, write to him and let him know you know me. No, I remember in the beginning when he first started, he made me a couple of designs early on, and remember when we tried to get him to make the t-shirt.
Yeah,
right. So I think that's one of the things that you look at is the fan interaction. The fans love it. There's nothing pimpish except for the attire and the way he dressed. I think I liken it to the what was it? Kramer wearing the coat walking down the street. And it was just one of those things that very Seinfeld-like, very surreal. And he's having fun with it. I'm more enjoying that the team has played a better brand of baseball since those first 5 games. And it was inevitable. It wasn't going to stay that way. The weather was atrocious. Waking up just thinking, I'm glad I'm not playing baseball was enough for me to say that no matter what happened in these first couple of weeks, it didn't matter. Wasn't going to judge the team by that. And on the other side of town, of course, people were ready to start the ticker tape parade because the Yankees started out so hot. So, it's a great time to be a New York fan. I think there's going to be really good baseball played all summer long. And the Mets have turned things around, and let's see how they do on this homestand.
Yeah, and as we approach the end of the month here, you got Rally Pimps, you got Dollar Hot Dogs, and finally, on April 26th, tomorrow, Friday, whenever you listen to this, Friday when the Mets take on the Cardinals, 2 days after the 20-year anniversary of my bar mitzvah on April 24th, 2004. You want to see, before we talk Mets, my family was sending me pictures from my bar mitzvah, and I'll show you on here. There is me coming out.
Literally.
Clearly a rally pimp since I was 13. There's the Men in Black Brown brothers.
Oh my gosh!
You lose.
Yeah, where's that little pen to make me forget that? Yeah, thanks.
There is little Jake with his whatever that thing is called. Happy Passover.
Hey, Mama's looking good.
Yeah, that was Mom back in the day. Here's my Jake's Wide World of Sports was my theme. So you see the Mike Piazza, the cardboard cutouts before COVID, before we were in the crowd, and it was like me and a shea chair with a bunch of things, and then mom and son. I mean, this could have been Lil Dicky Jr. I mean, look at this rap star. Look at this future rap star.
I want to make a baseball card out of that, please.
Put my chicken parm intake. There's another $10 on the back of that card. It'll be like 8,000 calories consumed on April 27th. My daily calorie intake per year. That would set diabetic records. But, also setting some records in his career is JD Martinez. And finally, we've been waiting. It's happening Friday, Figgy. JD Martinez in a Mets uniform looked good in Syracuse. Looked like his back's doing better. He's only had to hit. He'll probably play the field maybe once all year in an emergency if they need it, at first base of the outfield. But the Mets have, I think, we'll talk about the lineup and where he should hit because that's one of our mailbag questions. The Mets have their big bopper, and they need it with Francisco Alvarez out till probably early July.
Yeah, it's sorely needed. It was one of those things that I get it. The price came down to a point where he wanted a 2-year deal. They weren't willing to do a 2-year deal. Also, getting him to defer the money so they didn't continue to go further over the luxury tax. All those things made sense to me. The one thing that I was always going to have a problem with all these guys signing late, and now you see he was hurt, missed a little bit of time already because of sore back. You see Snell already put on the IL. He's injured. And the Montgomery took his time to get ready. And let's see, if it works in his favor that he took his time to get ready and made his debut against Snell just a week ago, and see if he's able to continue and stay healthy throughout the season. It's a difficult thing to do when you're a free agent and you're waiting for that call from your agent that the deal is done and where you're headed. It's very difficult to stay as in tune with your body as when you're playing and you're around the guys and you're ramping it up a little bit, because you're always going to feel like you're behind, no matter how much baseball you've played. And he's had a long career already. You just feel like you're behind, and you try to do a little bit too much. You maybe take an extra 2 rounds, a day of BP, and you don't realize that you're actually doing, a little bit more damage to your body than good. Not always more is better. So I'm glad he's healthy. I'm glad he's swinging the bat well. He's hitting the ball hard again. I'm excited to see him in a Met uniform. This is a guy who I root for from back in the Astros days. He was in the farm system when I was there with the Astros. And, he got to the big leagues, and he went to change his he changed his hitting coaches in the offseason, changed his approach, and they literally got rid of him. They released him last day of spring training, and he got picked up with the Tigers after working on this. And the Tigers benefited from it because I believe he hit 26 home runs, made the All-Star team after that. And since then has been averaging 30 and 100. And just to think the Astros would have had that in their lineup too, with everybody else. He would have been one of the first ones. Him and Altuve were the 2 that were coming up from the minor leagues that we knew about. And he didn't get the opportunity because he had a bad spring training, but made the most of it after changing his approach, and was really one of the, I would say, the forefathers of this new launch angle swing.
And, you mentioned him and the Tigers and Red Sox. How about him? We'll flash a picture here. Ed Stockton, who does a great job broadcasting at Syracuse, him and Jose Iglesias back together again. It's like me and you. Look, the orange, the blue, except I think I'm taller than you, so I'd be the blue here. You'd be the orange. A lot of people have met me lately, and like, I didn't realize you were this tall. I'm like, you see me in an Instagram box, like,
yeah, you're sitting down.
I'm usually the Hunchback of Notre Astoria, not standing up. So good to see them back together. Interesting to see him in AAA. And Ashley Wenskoski, I'm sorry if I said her name, Wenskoski at CNY Central up in Syracuse, actually spoke to him the other day, and he was talking about how bad it was for baseball that all these players are signing late. And you're seeing it here, Figgy, with some of these guys slow, the injuries. Look at Blake Snell. He's now on the shelf. Now, sure, there's something that, these guys are working out, they're doing their own thing, but not being at spring training to the end, not only did it delay JD Martinez, maybe that is a reason for the back issue. Swinging on a tee and swinging in these, these centers that they go, these fancy places, like our guy King of Swing out of Long Island, going to those places, it's just not the same as being with the team, facing 96-mile-an-hour fastballs. It's just a different vibe, and some of these guys either aren't ready or they're getting hurt. I know, and we'll talk about that with pitching injuries, but I agree with JD. Bad for baseball to have a guy sign on March 26th and the season is 2 days away and they're nowhere near ready.
Yeah, the Players Union is saying that there should be a deadline for these guys to be signed by.
Because the offseason drags on for months. Baseball is the worst offseason of any sport. NBA and NFL, by mid to late March, Figgy, everyone's pretty much signed. All the good players are signed to football. And NBA by like July 15th or like July 3rd, after Woj tweets out 89,000 notifications, where everyone is. Baseball, it goes into April. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems though is, remember, with the union being so strong, players are waiting and they're going to wait for their best deal. The problem is that they're getting the same deal from every team. It's a take it or leave it situation. If you look around, who was it? Kike Hernandez, who had signed with the Dodgers, returned to the Dodgers. He said everywhere he went, they wanted to give him the same $4 million. And what they're doing is now it's based on production has a value. RBIs have a number to it. Batting average has a number to it. Slugging percentage has a number to it. So they're plugging in the formula and it's all coming out the same. There's no more, man, this guy looks good in a uniform. I'd love to have him on my team. This guy's wife is pretty hot. We should have him on our team. This guy, played for me when he was younger. I'd love to have him back on my team. The ownership is taken out of it, and now it's put in the hands of people who crunch numbers for a living, and they're setting out and they're putting the value on these players that is making it more and more difficult for guys like Scott Boras to get his guys what he thinks they deserve. It doesn't matter what Scott Boras thinks anymore. And we learned that, right, through this. He had 4 of the top 10 free agents, and 4 of those top 10 free agents didn't sign until, spring training was almost over. So that, of course, is I think everybody banded together on the ownership side to say, screw Scott Boras. We're going to break him finally, even though you're still talking about these guys making $25 million opt-outs and things like that to try and get back in there. But I do think that Major League Baseball all the way around is setting a new precedence of how the market is shaped is just ones and zeros. It doesn't matter really anymore about the statistics that you think are, the value to a team. Honestly, I don't think they look at if you kiss puppies and you're a great guy in the community, well, let's give them a couple of extra $1 million. That doesn't matter to them anymore. They're literally about productivity. And if your productivity says you are X number of dollars, that's what you are.
Yeah, it's a sad time for baseball. And, it was sad for a lot of these players who, waited and did not get exactly what they deserve. We got a lot more Mets to talk here on the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. But one of our questions for our mailbag this week was about JD Martinez. So before we get into the rest of the Mets, let's hear from you, the fans. We're about 20, 25 minutes into the show. I think it's time to hear from you. Remember, tweet us at SickPodMets. Speaking of JD Martinez, our first question is from my guy, Alex Ortiz, _5 on Twitter X. Who gets bumped off the active roster for JD Martinez this Friday, Figgy? I think the obvious answer would have to be Zach Short, right?
Yes and no, depending on the health of everyone. Short has options still, so I would think that is the most obvious because of his lack of playing time as it is, right? I think
also because Joey Wendell does the same thing he does.
Correct. And Joey Wendell's playing a lot more. Joey Wendell's played, I think, 4 times as much as Zach Short has. The other thing I think is Zach Short has options still, and that was one of the reasons that they signed him, is because they knew they had options on him, so that was sent him down. And DJ Stewart has actually, started to hit a little bit. And so you want to keep him as well because you want to have that bat coming off the bench. So, yeah, it seems like Zach Short is going to be the guy because if there is an injury that happens, you're going to wind up calling him up anyway. So there's no panic in that, or you'll be able to call somebody up to replace an injured infielder. But knock on wood, nobody gets injured. He's probably the guy to go.
Yeah, about 7-8 days ago, the answer was very obviously DJ Stewart. And then he must have been low on Pampers diapers, and his bat came alive. I mean, he hit a couple of huge home runs, including a go-ahead homer in Atlanta. And DJ Stewart said, "Go DJ, that's my DJ." And he said, "Goodbye, Zach Short." And Zach Short was a great story. Grew up a Mets fan, got the spot, found out a couple hours after he found out, sadly, his grandma passed. So it was an emotional day for him. Good story. But the Mets have Wendell, and God forbid they need a backup first baseman or outfield, JD, if he has to. Obviously, with attack, everything, they don't want him to. But Joey Wendell can play third, second, short. He does what Zach Short does. And also the other factor here of why it would be Short is because Brett Beatty's hitting righties and lefties. Brett Beatty has been good this year and living up to expectations. So good question there from Alex Ortiz. All right, let's go to our next question here in the mailbag, and that comes from loyal listener of Amazing But True, Chris Ferrara at the C Money 21. Older news, but curious Figgy's take on all the pitching injuries across the league as a former pitcher.
Well, I think we've learned these athletes are bigger, faster, stronger. That means absolutely nothing to the human body because the pitching arm can only handle so much. These kids are been raised more sports specific and playing more baseball year round, training more baseball year round. They're kids, at 11, 12 years old, like you talked about, these baseball factories where they're trying to, they're called running guns and throw the ball as hard as they can, even throwing 2-ounce baseballs so that it seems like they're throwing harder when they're recording because everybody wants to see radar gun numbers. And what you're seeing on TV is everybody throwing, upwards of 95 to 100 miles an hour. Yes and no. The thing is that they're measuring from 55 feet now. So if you take the old school guys and you measure them from 55 feet, the same way we were measured from 60 feet, 6 inches, you would see higher numbers. So that doesn't mean that it's normally the same. When you're seeing hitters hitting these 100-mile-an-hour pitches, hitters have always been able to hit what they see. So they're used to seeing velocity. What they're not used to seeing is, I guess, a case in point, if you watch there was a game last night with the Oakland A's starting pitcher, and every fastball he threw was just rear back, throw as hard as you can. He had no location, no command. You see less and less command guys. They don't care about walks. They care more about strikeouts. They're blowing through 75, 80 pitches in 3 to 4 innings, and you have starting pitchers now going less than 5 innings, and they're getting, if they don't give up any runs, wow, what a great job he did as a starting pitcher. The game has changed in that way, right? It's max effort, and that's what relievers used to do. That's why relievers always threw harder than the starters, because the relievers were only going 1 inning, so you can air it out, right, and then recover afterwards. As a starting pitcher, and you have to pace yourself for 100-plus pitches, well, you want to make sure you have something left in the tank when you get to the 6th, 7th inning and there's runners on base. You don't want to hand it over to a guy who comes in and gives up your runs. So I think for the game itself, it's this new model of harder is better. You got to throw the ball 100 miles an hour, or else, you're not going to see the light of day up at the major league level. And I think the day is going to come back where pitching is more important than throwing, than velo. I mean, it's all about spin rates, and you're talking about spinning a baseball at 2,800 RPMs, ball bouncing in front of the plate, and a hitter looking foolish. But it's not a 2-2 slider that a guy puts on the corner. There's no art to it. There's no feel to pitching up and down. Now there's exceptions to every rule, but I think for the most part, you're looking at a generation of really hard throwers, but I wouldn't say that they are very good pitchers.
Well, I think a lot of people, though, Figgy, want to attribute it to the pitch clock and having to rush and not having enough time. Do you think that is ultimately the biggest factor, that guys are too worried about the clock, delivering faster than usual? They don't get to take a break like before. Steve Traction could take 1,000 breaks. It was the walking rain, the human rain delay, and other pitchers could do that if they wanted. They could get a break. They could do whatever they wanted. Now, because of the rules are so limited, it's pitch, all right, occasional break, but you're throwing so many pitches in a short amount of time. Does that have any factor, or is that, a bunch of baloney? Because that's been the major topic of discussion.
Well, think about it this way. The hitters have to hurry up too, right? Remember, Big Papi used to step out and clap his gloves and reset himself and get focused and just kind of, hey, what did this guy throw me on the last time I was up with a 3-1 count? Did he throw me a fastball? Did he throw me a curveball? So there was a strategy to it, right? And now you have just swingers who swing and miss and strike out more. All right. So you're hurrying up the hitter at the same time. Now,
but they get breaks because there's pitches that are outside that they're not swinging at, and it doesn't involve the torque or kinetic changes.
Look at you. You've been listening.
$10 in the car. Yes.
So one of the things that I will say is that we were always kind of taught to work at a quicker pace because it keeps your defense on their toes and everybody's alert and ready. And for the hitter, you're rushing the hitter. So the thought process to make a hitter think and have a little bit of doubt, then you win. But if he's 100% certain you're going to throw a fastball on a fastball count, then you're really, you're at his mercy of having to execute it perfectly and him to miss it. The professional hitters don't miss fastballs and fastball counts. So what I look at is that, yes, it has something to do with it, but these kids have been raised on this. You're not talking about the pitch clock didn't just start for the kids that came up from the minor leagues. Now, for the older generation of guys, like the Max Scherzers, the Justin Verlanders of the world, those guys, yeah, it was a little bit of a shock to the system, and then all of a sudden they dropped it to a few seconds slower, less this year. I think, does the pace have something to do with it? Yes. When you're going max effort and you're getting tired, you don't have a break in between. It's like if you were lifting weights and, you're doing a set of 10, and then all of a sudden you say, yeah, now I'm going to do a set of 10, but I'm going to do a set of 10 in 10 seconds. Now I'm going to do that same set of 10 times in 10 seconds. And how are you going to be after that 100th, that 100th rep? It's obviously going to take a lot more time. It's going to be a lot more strenuous than that first rep that you've done.
Yeah, and the Mets have had to deal with, a couple injuries so far. Luckily, the likes of Jose Buda have filled in tremendously. I mean, yes. He's been very good. And, David Stearns, one thing he showed you, he's not afraid to just cut a guy, and we'll talk about that in a
Oof.
second, and move on and DFA him, and then bring him back, and then maybe DFA him again, and then get him a cup of coffee at the local coffee shop, and then DFA him again. Which I feel bad for the player. You're someone who's been through similar stuff to that, but it's also part of the business. And if a guy isn't good, you bring in a fresh arm, and they aren't holding on to guys who are getting rocked like they have in the past. And almost like in the past, they either felt bad, didn't have the contracts right where they can do that, maybe didn't have enough options, where guys were here for so long and they kept getting rocked. And I'm like, why is this still guy here? If you're on the fringe and you get rocked 2 times, you're probably by this Mets regime getting DFA'd. And it's a tough business, but it means that they mean business. All right, we got one more question here in the mailbag from another loyal listener, Seth Orenstein. I believe the pride of Jericho, the walls of Jericho, home of former girlfriend of mine, Brooke, who my mom like knows her like anniversary of the girl's wedding, like her baby's birthday, she knows. And it's like, issues with the world of Facebook is
the one that got away, Jake.
The one that got away. Yeah, she's got like 3 kids, family, maybe one. That might be maybe. I just see a kid every day. If someone has a kid, I think it's her. All right, Seth Orenstein. More in Jake therapy. What would you bet JD Martinez in the current order? Thanks to the question, Seth, and thanks for all your questions at SickPodMets, at Jake Brown Radio. You could tweet at Amazing with Jake. Oh, tweet them all. Give them all a follow. I think it's got to be 5th, and here's why. 1, Starling Marte is hitting incredible. You cannot move him from the 2 spot. And Francisco Lindor has now come around, and all the haters could shut their damn mouths because he's hitting, and he's hitting incredibly. The first ever Met with a 4-for-4, 2-homer, 4 RBI day for a shortstop in the franchise history on Wednesday against the Giants. Monster day. He's back. So I think he's got to stay 3. I think Alonso got to stay 4. And the only spot then is 5. And then you hope when Alvarez comes back, Alvarez is 6 in the lineup that we salivated over. Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't get to with you because they signed JD Martinez after Amazing But True came to an end. But the lineup, the opening day lineup we salivated over, will be here hopefully in July, and everyone stays healthy. And then Brett Beatty, the way he's hitting, Figgy is 7th. But I think 5 seems to be the no-brainer spot for JD.
Yeah, he was signed to be protection for Pete Alonso. That was the bottom line, right? We saw what a travesty it was to have someone who was inept at batting behind Pete Alonso. And I couldn't understand for the life of me how Pete Alonso saw anything to hit at any point last season and the season before when you had Vogelbach behind him. It made no sense that you would challenge Pete.
I never thought I'd hear that fat ass's name again, and we heard it. And I could call him a fat ass because I'm a fat ass. But why did you have to bring up that nightmare? Sorry, continue.
Because I want to show you the contrast in regimes, right? Buck Showalter was told he had to be in the lineup because his metrics spoke volumes when he made contact. If he made contact wasn't the question. When he made contact, his metrics were just as good as Pete's. And you are out of your freaking mind if you can try and say that those are the same 2 hitters. It's not apples and oranges. Those are both fruit. It's apples and rocks. Okay.
By the way, he's 1 for 12 with the Blue Jays this season.
Shocker.
What an RBI double. That's it.
I think when you look at it, it's just a natural fit. It'll be the first time that Pete's had protection of that magnitude, of that level of a hitter where, you know what, choose your poison because you got a guy who can give you 30 and 100 right there. So that would give them 3 hitters in a row with 30 and 100 potential. You got Marte up at the top where his speed is back. You can see he's running just as well as he did a year ago. 6 stolen bases already, and last year he hit 24 total in 88 games, 22 games now. So he's right on par, and he's going to be even better than that because he's going to have opportunities to run. And then, of course, top of the lineup with Brandon Nimmo, you're going to have another guy who can score. So I think this is going to be a very complete lineup that can do some good things. And I love the fact that they're not just swinging for the fences. I love the fact that they're, it took them a little while to get going, but you can see what this team can be like. And when Alvarez comes back, because a kid with 25 home runs and only 400 at bats, I think you're going to have an opportunity for this lineup to score a bunch of runs. And, one of the things about the whole team is that the pitching had been doing very, very well without Senga. right? Without having your big gun at the top of the rotation. So I think this 3-3 road trip, if it wasn't for a trickery by the Dodgers and they had to pitch Paxton instead of Tyler Glasnow, which I still can't believe Major League Baseball doesn't say anything about. And it was just like, oh, by the way, we're going to pitch Glasnow instead. Totally different level of pitcher, but that beat the Mets up. Those next three starters beat the Mets up, and then they were able to salvage that last game. So lineup is going to be well-rounded because JD Martinez isn't just a power hitter, isn't just a swing for the fence guy. He's a lifetime 280 hitter. So I think that's what you're looking at, is somebody who could get hits in big moments as well.
Yeah, so the lineup, with the catchers now are Narvaez and Ito. There's just not much other help they have. Parada has really regressed in the minor leagues. He's going to have a big year. He's not ready for the big leagues this season. Who knows even if next season. So they don't really have anyone else. They expected Alvarez, and obviously a freak injury. You hate to see it, but it's Nimmo, Lindor, Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso, JD Martinez. Then it'll be Brett Beatty. Then it'll be It'll be Bader or McNeil 6? Do you think that's the other?
No, Bader. I think you still keep Bader 9. I know he was hitting really, really hot, but I like Bader 9.
No, well, Narvaez will be 9, Bader will be 8, but then 6 to 7. Do they have McNeil 6 or Beatty 7? I forget what they've been doing, but I guess it's not a big difference. But.
No, I think again you have the options to do both things, and I'm fine with either one, 6 or 7.
Yeah, so the lineup is set, and a big part of that, at least in the fill-in, has been tea time. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of the rap song where I got that from, because I've been saying it a lot, and I assume 99% of people have no idea what I'm talking about. Tea time. I got to remember where that's from. Oh, it's Travis Scott, I believe, in Meltdown. But 327. I mean, what a steal that trade ended up being. You get Tyrone Taylor and Adrian Houser. Now, Adrian Houser has been the one part of this team who's been atrocious so far. The 7+ ERA and 4 starts. It's still early. But to get those two guys for one prospect, and Coleman Crow has looked great. And, you want to talk about other, success stories. This bullpen has been remarkable. And Reed, if I asked you on April 25th who the MLB leader in wins was, you could take 250 guesses and you still would have never guessed Reed Garrett. You could name every pitcher in baseball, forget Reed Garrett existed, and he'd be the guy. Reed Garrett has been a phenomenon, and it's April. We've seen these kind of guys fall, Drew Smith, as you like to say, in the words of Bradley Cooper, fall by the wayside in a great movie. What movie?
Stars Born.
Stars Born, sorry. 0.71 ERA. He gave his first run on Wednesday, a solo homer. Reed Garrett and his beard of Zeus. He's a better-looking, bigger bearded me. Which just means he's bald. That's like the only real comparison that we have.
That's where you two the comparisons begin and end. But
he's like the long man Wild Thing out of the Mets bullpen, and what an X factor he's been. Because you didn't even look at him as you talked about Jorge Lopez has been good. You were talking about Rally, who's out a few weeks, but he should be back fairly soon. We obviously talked about Diaz. The LED light show has been amazing. Ottavino has looked remarkable. You're getting what you thought you got out of the good guys. But a guy like Reed Garrett, you didn't expect this. And it's been so good that you've been able to put him, if you need him, in higher leverage 7th or 8th inning spots. And what a factor that's been. And you just hope he keeps it up, because if he does, he could be a big part of a winning Mets baseball team.
As long as he continues with the formula. And the formula has been very simple. Stop throwing fastballs. For him, last year he was about 30% fastball usage. This year he's been about 13%. And I know what you're thinking. Don't you have to throw a fastball to be in the major leagues? You have to throw a fastball to get to the major leagues. You have to throw hard enough to show that you can throw a fastball at the major league level. He uses his fastball mostly for show, just to kind of let the hitter gauge 95, 96. And what I saw yesterday was an uptick. He hit 98 miles an hour. And I was like, whoa, what's this guy doing? He was throwing everything a little bit harder yesterday, and I think that's one of the things that led to the home run. The pitch didn't have the same movement that he has been having. So I hope he doesn't start trying to throw harder. I fell victim to that in my career as well, because you start feeling yourself a little bit. Now you want to kind of take it to another level. No, stay where you're at. That 13% fastball usage to show the pitch up in the zone, out of the zone, back a hitter off the plate, great. His weapon of choice, of course, is that split finger. And he's been throwing that split finger even last year, and he had really good success with it. So the obvious is throw it more. And he has been doing that. He's been throwing it to righties and lefties. He used to use it only for lefties. He uses it for righties now. His slider has nice movement the other way. The cutter was the one thing yesterday that just kept leaking back over the plate. It's like 90, 91, 92. And it kept leaking back over the plate because he wasn't finishing it, because he was trying to throw it too hard. But when you take his mix of what he's able to do and you put it together in the right usage, he's an electric pitcher who is having the results. You're talking about a guy who is striking out 51% of the hitters he's facing. 51% of the hitters that he's faced, he's sent down with a strikeout. That is off the chart type numbers, where this guy got sent to the minor leagues as an afterthought. But I think before he went down to the minor leagues, they had spoken to him about, this should be your pitch usage. This is your pitch mix. This is where a front office who understands what the metrics means and explain it to the pitcher in a way that shows him how a road to success that he's never had before. And so far, so good. Like I said, the only thing that can mess this up is if hitters kind of make an adjustment. It's very difficult to make an adjustment when you throw in an 88 to 90 mile an hour split finger that just drops off the table. You're still going to swing at it in this day and age of swing and miss. They don't care. But I think his pitch usage of making mistakes with his fastball over the plate, or his cutter not cutting and just becoming a cement mixer, turns into a BP fastball and gets hit hard. Other than that, man, he's been amazing. And I hope he continues with that usage, because his stuff really, really plays up.
Last thing on this bullpen, and then we'll move on. A couple more minutes here with Nelson Figueroa, Jake Brown. You catch him on Pix 11, New York Sports Nation nightly, 7 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Channel 11. The bullpen, Michael Tonkin. Can we flash here, guys, just what's happened to him? Because you're a guy who's bounced up and down, but I want to know if there's anything like this. The Mets have DFA'd Michael Tonkin. He was initially on April 5th after a couple appearances. He was traded Twins for cash considerations April 9th. He pitched 2 innings there. Then he was DFA'd. He was pitched 2 innings, by the way, April 12th there, and he gave up 2 runs. He did not pitch good. And then DFA'd the next day. Brought back by the Mets on April 17th. He makes 2 appearances for the Mets on April 20th, 21st, back-to-back days. They needed innings eater. 2 runs the first game. He got a win, and then no runs the next game, April 21st. And then he gets DFA'd again. I mean, this poor guy, Figgy. I read that he, had broke the lease of his New York apartment, gets an apartment in Minnesota. I hope it was one of those weekly apartments where you can move out in a week. Because now why the heck would you want to go back live in Minnesota? I'm sorry.
Airbnb.
Do you have anything remotely similar to this where you got an apartment? I get it. Like anything to this time window that happened to you?
Yeah. Oh God. Yes. A multitude of times, even with the Mets.
Give me the dates, the frame. I want to know.
2009, I came up. It was April 27th. It was my mother's birthday.
Oh. I
came up, I pitched, and they said, well, Pelfrey's probably going on the DL. We started the DL back then, not the IL. Pelfrey's going on the DL most likely, and you're going to be in the rotation, for the foreseeable future, and then we'll figure it out when the time comes. I pitched a game. We lost 3-2. I went 6 innings against the Brewers. We lost 3-2. So, hard-fought game. Get done with my interviews afterwards. Say, I'll do whatever this team needs. Start, relieve. They know what I'm capable of, blah, blah, blah. As soon as the cameras go off, I get tapped on the shoulder and called into the office. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I've been here like 12 hours. I mean, is this really happening? Well, we need another arm. I go, you have an off day on Monday. I pitched on, I believe it was a Saturday. I go, you have an off day on Monday. I go, by the time we go Tuesday to St. Louis, I'll be fully recovered from my start, and I can relieve or start again if you needed me to. I said, I can do whatever. And they went to Casey Fossum because he had an out in his contract by May 1st and the whole big blah, 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 blah. There's so many things that work into these things. that it's annoying because you think you have it figured out, but you have no clue, like the depths of everything that's going on. So, listen, when I first was up in the big leagues with Philadelphia, 3 days, I had 3 starts up in the big leagues with the Diamondbacks, got traded to Philadelphia. So I had an apartment in Phoenix, living in Tucson because I was a AAA team. I got traded to the Phillies. So I landed in Philadelphia, but I had to go to Canada because I was going to meet the AAA team and pitch in Canada. From there, I moved to AAA, which was Scranton, Wilkes-Barre. And so you don't get apartments as you go. And the apartments that you had at the big league level, the team takes care of that. So breaking the lease, the team takes care of whatever the payment is on breaking the lease and everything else. So there's no worry about that for the player. But I had moved between my Diamondback last start to when I was up with the team in Philadelphia in 2001, 8 times. And the off season counts because you go home because that's not one of your real places. And then of course in 2002, I get put on waivers opening day and I moved to Milwaukee. So add Milwaukee into that. So yeah, it's not as glamorous as it seems. You're in the big leagues. Oh my God, yeah, you were with 3 teams or 2 teams, basically 2 teams in course of 15 days. It's nerve-wracking on you, your family, your support system. People don't know where you are or how long you're going to be there. You don't know. Can he pitch in the major league? Sure. Was he pitching well? Not really. And so at his age, it was kind of a all or nothing. He made the team because he pitched very well in spring training. And, he started out not pitching very well. And then he gets DFA'd a few times and he's a free agent looking for an opportunity now. So it's not a fun thing, that roller coaster. That part of the roller coaster is not fun. That's probably where the loop-de-loops happen and you think, I'm going to throw up. It seemed like a good idea until I got to this point. But for an opportunity at the major leagues, remember, this is a guy who pitched for the Long Island Ducks. And we bonded over that in spring training. I talked with him about that. This is a long way from the Ducks just a few years ago. And he had such a good year with the Atlanta Braves just last year. So he is capable of turning it around. Now it's just finding an opportunity somewhere, and you just usually have to wait for an injury or two to get that.
Yeah, Michael Tonkin's going to have a good book one day because, he was out of the big leagues from 2018 to 2022, this year bouncing around. So, all right, that wraps up Michael Tonkin conversation. We got a couple more minutes here with Figgy. I know you have a haircut, which you're going to be late for because, we've done shows with me where you looked homeless. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, it looks like it is virtual. It does look like you're living in Billy Joel's home. There is a piano back there. I credit me for paying your rent for 4 years with the podcast that now you live in the Taj Mahal over there. Look at that background.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Let's kind of, as we're starting to wrap up here, let's look at, the Citi Connect jerseys. We'll flash on the screen here how they look. Have been a major story. And listen, I don't hate them, but I also wasn't in the camp of I need to buy this jersey. Like when I saw the Citi Connect jersey, Figgy, I wasn't like, this is the cleanest jersey ever. The Mets will debut them Saturday. By the way, Friday on Apple TV is JD Martinez debut, and Saturday is the Citi Connect jersey on Fox. So JD and the Citi Connect are both not on SNY, which is criminal. But what was your thoughts when you saw these gray jerseys?
I like them. I get there's a lot of details that went into them. They put a lot of thought. It wasn't just, hey, we just change the colors and throw 3 letters on the chest. Each thing has each element. Was taken from different parts of the city. I like the Queensboro Bridge on the brim. I put up a post about maybe needing more purple in the NY to balance it out because it just seems so stark, that NY right on the top. The token NY symbol on the sleeve with the purple for the 7-line train was pretty cool. I think they should have had kind of like the little purple map line that goes through for the 7-line, that just that one line going across all the other pinstripes would have kind of been cool to have that element of where the 7-line is, with maybe something for the stop at Willis Point. I think it's cool. I think there was a lot of thought that went into it. Like I said, it wasn't just, hey, let's just throw an orange jersey with, reverse the letters, and there we go. So, and of course it's different and people are going to go out and buy it. So it's probably going to be a huge sell rather than just being an orange and blue. Now you have the purple and gray. One of my guys, the stage manager for us at Pix, Russell, he went out and bought the T-shirt, the jacket, the hat, the jersey. He's got it all. He's got it all. On day one, he went to the MLB store and bought it all. So I think they look pretty cool. I think, again, it's just different. Is it Mercury Mets-ish? No, that was disgusting looking. I think this one has more of a, it has more of a New York vibe to it.
Yeah, you see there, Edwin Diaz. Now, I love the hat. The skyline is fantastic. That is my favorite part. I think the jersey needed more purple. I know much to the dismay of Howie Rose and old times fan. I just think we could have had more, because purple, I think, is clean with that black and gray where you barely see it. I mean, yeah. I also I would have loved Queens instead of NYC. I love New York City, obviously, but the Mets are Queens, and I think it's just more prideful for those Queens people. I think overall Mets fans like NYC better. But if you're a Queens boy like me, if you live in Queens, I feel like you would have loved to rep Queens more. Just, people Brooklyn and Queens are prideful of where they come from. If you're prideful from Staten Island, you're probably a loser. Sorry, that's mean. But Staten Island, you're not as prideful as you are like some people in Jersey, Brooklyn, Queens. There's certain places, the city. I'm from 76th Street. I'm from the Upper West Side. But Queens and Brooklyn, I feel like those two boroughs are more prideful in their borough more than anyone else. So I would have liked to say Queens.
No, I agree. I think it's saying Queens, but now you leave an opportunity for the next one to have it say
That's
Queens.
True.
You're gonna get feedback from the fans. Exactly. Yeah. So you're going to do it. NYC, you could cover more fans that aren't necessarily just Mets fans because it says NYC. There's a whole research department behind this, again, that we're not privy to the inside of the meetings. But I do think a little bit more purple instead of the stark contrast of the white around the letters, even if it's just a shade, of purple, or it's starting at white and turning into purple, just to kind of give it a feel of movement. I think, like I said, I think it's a good job. I think again, you're going to get a lot of comments, which is that's what you want them to do, is have that interaction of it. I like the elements, like the Queensboro Bridge being in it. But again, making the Queensboro Bridge maybe stand out a little bit, painting it that iconic yellow color that it was, whether it's a big version or a little version of it. So I think one of the things you're looking at is, did it get a buzz? Big time. Do fans, the majority of the fans, I think, like it. I think, do they love it? No, they it's growing on them, but I think it has enough elements and the story behind it, with the concrete colors for the gray and how it's speckled to look like concrete. And then, of course, the diamond shapes and the circles for the stops along the 7 line in the black going down. So I don't think it's very Rockies, which a lot of people, it'll be more like the Rockies. No, it's not an homage to the Rockies. I think just you do it right, and now it gives it an opportunity to have another jersey, and I think Queens would be the next edition.
Yeah, let's make it Queens, baby. All right. We got to close out with you. A lot of people who replied were like, we need a Nelson Figueroa Spanish Academy, just like for old time's sake. So is there anything from today's show that you think would be fun? Now, it doesn't have to – I know it is Passover, so maybe you want to see me try to roll an R and make it sound like Baruch Atah Adonai with challah bread. But any, city – if you knew Rally Pimp or, Comeback Pimp or City Connect Jersey or anything.
I think Pimp is universal in every language.
Pimp.
Let's see. Rally Pimp now. Martinez.
Cortisone shot. JD Martinez.
Let's see. We could go with the return of JD Martinez, which is El Regreso del JD Martinez.
El Regreso de JD Martinez.
El Regreso.
You thought over all this time I would have still learned after 4 years.
Nope.
El Regreso. Now I just had a look. Someone last week I was talking to them. I met them for the first time. They're like, oh, you have a lisp too. I'm like, I don't have a lisp. I don't know if it was, do I have a lisp? And I never knew. I don't think I do. She made me think I started saying things with a lisp after she said that, or I was trying not to. And now I'm like overthinking. Do I have a lisp?
Really noticeable?
Yes. I mean,
and so she thought you were one of the.
She's like, oh, wow, you have a lisp too. I'm like, no, I do not. So now I'm thinking every day, do I have a lisp? I never. Now, see, saying the word lisp, I feel like I have a lisp.
Don't.
Regreso. Lisp.
Oh my God.
El regreso de JD. Regreso. It sounds like the soup. Is that Progresso,
mm-hmm.
and the regreso. From that. All right, that's a good one. Do you got one more? Or?
Well, a reparación is the reappearance of JD. I'm trying to think. What else do we have? What have we seen?
How about this? $1 hot dogs.
Hot dogs are hot dogs.
There's no hot dog in Spanish.
It's hot dog. It's not even an English word. Just they made that up. What do you say? Perro caliente?
I Google and it said sustantivo. Does that ring a bell at all?
No.
Sustantivo or poncho?
Poncho? That's a jacket that you wear.
I just Google. I don't know. It's yeah, no. I think it looks like sustanvino is how do you say $1?
Un dollar.
Dollar?
Mm-hmm.
Un dollar. All right, so there's no hot dog.
$1.
All right, $1 de hot dog, $1 de sastavino, and El Progreso.
Let's see more wiener.
Yeah. How do you say Seymour Wiener? Well, we'll close it on that because we know Nelson Figueroa loves seeing more wiener. Indeed. You can go to Dollar
Max or Seymour.
Yeah, Max, Seymour, or just a wiener itself. And you can go to that. I don't think I'm going to talk to him on Dollar Wiener Night. I'm going to talk to Max Wiener from Citi Field. So stay tuned for that next week on Mets Magic. Nelson Figueroa, you can follow him on Twitter, X at FiggyNY. Watch him 7 to 7:30 on Pix 11. New York Sports Nation Nightly. Figgy, just like we always do, a marathon. We're always saying, yeah, we'll be done in 30 minutes.
20 minutes. It's a quick one.
62 minutes later, we are finally done. Thanks for coming on the debut of Mets Magic, and hopefully we'll do it again next month.
My pleasure, brother. Talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. That is Nelson Figueroa. Appreciate him coming on the show, and thanks for listening to the first episode of the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. You can subscribe to our YouTube page. Check it out at the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. Twitter at SickPod Mets. Me at Jake Brown Radio. We'll be back next week. We'll have all the Dollar Wiener Night reaction. Mets Cubs, a good series. Mets Cardinals this weekend. Enjoy it. 13-11 versus 11-14. You get JD Martinez. You get City Connect. I will be away in Boston this weekend. I'll be at the Red Sox game Friday with my family. Let's go Knicks. Let's go Rangers. Let's go Mets. And thanks for listening to the first episode of the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. Jake Brown signing out. We'll talk to you next week.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Mets Magic on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.